The alleyway we had stumbled into felt like a brief respite, though I knew it was only temporary. The dim light from a flickering street lamp barely illuminated the path ahead, but it was enough for me to see the exhaustion in the survivors' eyes. They were huddled together, gasping for breath, their clothes torn and stained with blood. But we had made it. For now, we were alive. I glanced back at the street, watching for any signs of movement. The groaning of the zombies was distant, but I knew they weren't far. I could still hear them, echoing through the streets like a sinister chorus. They were relentless, always hunting, always searching. And eventually, they would come for us. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice hoarse. The adrenaline from the rooftop escape was wearing off, and my body ached from the strain. I could feel the blood drying on my arms, the cut on my leg from the fall stinging, but I pushed it aside. We didn't have the luxury of time. The woman who had helped pull me away from the horde stepped forward. She was tall, her face angular and sharp, framed by wild, matted hair. Her clothes were tattered, but there was a hardness to her, something in her eyes that told me she'd been through hell and wasn't ready to give up yet. She was clutching a rusty crowbar, the end dripping with the dark remnants of blood. "Agreed," she said. "We need to get to higher ground. The rooftops are safer, less chance of being cornered." The man with the crowbar from earlier, still gasping for air, nodded in agreement. He was stocky, his face broad with a jawline that suggested he'd been a fighter long before this nightmare began. His eyes were bloodshot, his body trembling, but there was still fight in him. He adjusted his grip on the crowbar. "We'll move fast," he said, his voice rough. "No stopping. We can't afford to." I didn't need any more convincing. We had to keep moving, keep fighting. But where to? The world outside this alley was a war zone, the city in chaos, and every second felt like a countdown to death. The woman turned toward me, her eyes assessing. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jackson," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was still racing from the fight, but I could see that these two survivors were sharp. They had been through this before, and I had to trust them. "Lisa," she said, "and this is Kevin." She nodded to the man. I nodded back, my mind racing. The city was falling apart, and we didn't know what we were going to face next. But we had one advantage. We were still alive. And that meant we had a chance. "Let's go," Kevin said, his voice hard, almost military. "We head for the rooftops. From there, we find a way out of this godforsaken place." We moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, our footsteps muffled by the cracked pavement. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and decay, and the distant sounds of chaos seemed to get closer with every passing moment. We passed abandoned cars, overturned and mangled, windows shattered like teeth scattered across the street. We reached a fire escape on a narrow building, the metal ladder hanging precariously. Lisa was the first to climb, her crowbar clutched in her hand. Kevin followed, moving with surprising speed for someone his size. I hesitated for a split second, my gaze flicking back down the alley. Was there anything, anyone, coming for us? I didn't have time to think. I followed, my hands clammy as I grabbed hold of the cold metal, pulling myself up with desperate urgency. Every step felt like a race against time, my muscles burning as I ascended higher. At the top, we paused, breathless, our eyes scanning the horizon. The rooftop was littered with debris, old furniture, pieces of broken machinery. But it was quiet for now, at least. The city sprawled beneath us, dark and twisted. The glow of the streetlights illuminated the chaos below, casting long shadows. Lisa was the first to move, leading us across the rooftops. We had no real plan, no clear direction, just a vague hope that somewhere out there was a chance to survive. The world had become a nightmare, but somehow, we were still awake. We reached a larger building, the rooftop a vast expanse. From here, I could see the outline of the city skyline, a silhouette of what had once been a bustling metropolis. Now, it was a graveyard. The streets were alive with movement, shambling figures, hunched over and slow, their grotesque forms just glimpses in the distance. I heard the groan before I saw it. It came from a building to our right, a low, guttural noise that sent a chill down my spine. And then I saw them, 4 or 5 zombies stumbling onto the rooftop, drawn to our presence. Their eyes were dull and lifeless, their movements jerky, inhuman. They stopped for a moment, their heads tilting as they sniffed the air, searching for us. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. My grip on the crowbar tightened. "We can't fight them all," Kevin whispered, his voice tight with panic. "We need to get out of here. Now." Lisa didn't hesitate. She grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the opposite side of the building, where another fire escape dangled precariously. I glanced back. The zombies were getting closer, but there were too many of them. If we didn't move quickly, we would be surrounded. We ran, hearts pounding, our footsteps echoing on the rooftop. I glanced back just in time to see one of the zombies lunge, its hands reaching for me. It missed by inches, its teeth snapping through the air as I ducked to the side. "Keep moving," Lisa yelled, her voice sharp. I pushed myself harder, my breath ragged in my throat. We reached the edge of the building, where the fire escape ladder was waiting. But there was no time to waste. I glanced at the others, my heart pounding in my chest. "Go," Kevin shouted, shoving me forward. We climbed down the ladder, the metal groaning under our weight as we descended into the alley below. The zombies were still on the roof, but they hadn't followed, yet. We hit the ground running, dodging through the alleyways. We couldn't keep running forever, but right now, it was all we could do. "We need a plan," I gasped, trying to keep pace. Lisa looked over her shoulder, her face hard. "We'll keep moving until we find a way out of this hell. If there's a way out." Her voice cracked slightly at the end, and I saw the doubt in her eyes. But there was still a fire there, a will to survive. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what we were running toward. What could we possibly hope to find in a city like this? And then, in the distance, I saw it, a flicker of light. Faint, but real. A sign of life. Hope. It could be a trap. It could be another horde of zombies. Or worse, desperate survivors who would turn on us. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in days. Hope. "Let's go," I said. "We have to check it out." Without another word, we pushed forward, our steps heavy with fear, but our hearts just a little lighter. For the first time in a long time, we weren't just running to survive. We were running toward the chance of life. And we weren't stopping until we found it. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.